When you think of what could go wrong on a cruise, I bet spending your days throwing up and having explosive diarrhea falls pretty low on that list. But for more than 500 passengers aboard the Celebrity Mercury, that became a daily reality. This is the virus cruise from hell. As the Celebrity Mercury ship set sail into the open ocean, the passengers were excited to embark on their 11-day restful Caribbean adventure. On February 15th, 2010, the luxurious cruise ship had just set sail from the port of Charleston, South Carolina, on a journey to various islands in the Caribbean. But what should have been a vacation of a lifetime turned into a nightmare for nearly 500 of the passengers on board. They were about to experience a gruesome virus that would turn their vacation into a living hell. The Celebrity Mercury was a Century-class vessel owned by Celebrity Cruises, a cruise line headquartered in Miami, Florida, and a wholly owned subsidiary of Royal Caribbean Group. The cruise line was founded in 1988 by the Greece-based Chandris Group and merged with Royal Caribbean Cruise Line in 1997. This particular ship had its maiden voyage on November 2nd, 1997, and boasted a variety of luxury facilities spread over 12 decks, including a 2-story showroom, casino, full-service spa, fitness center, swimming pool, whirlpools, adult-only solarium, card room, library, and internet cafe. The Mercury was a massive ship, measuring 865 feet in length and having a molded breadth of 106 feet. It had a passenger capacity of 1,886 and was staffed by 909 crew members. It's a magical cruise where passengers embark on an unforgettable journey through the sun-kissed Caribbean islands, where crystal clear waters and white sandy beaches are plentiful, where passengers can explore the vibrant local culture, indulge in exotic cuisine, and take in the breathtaking sights of a tropical paradise. From snorkeling in colorful coral reefs to ziplining through lush rainforests, there's no shortage of adventure and excitement to be found on such a cruise. But despite its grandeur and opulence, the Celebrity Mercury was about to become a floating chamber of horrors. As soon as the Celebrity Mercury set sail for the Caribbean from South Carolina, the passengers were filled with excitement and anticipation. Little did they know that their dream vacation was about to turn into a nightmare. It all started with just a few passengers feeling a little queasy and nauseous. They assumed it was just seasickness and didn't think much of it. But within a few hours, the symptoms intensified, and it became clear that something was seriously wrong. One after another, the passengers started throwing up and experiencing diarrhea. It was a horrifying sight, and soon the ship was filled with the sounds of vomiting and moaning. People stumbled out of their cabins, their faces pale and their bodies trembling with sickness. The crew tried to keep things under control, but they were quickly overwhelmed. As more and more passengers fell ill, they realized they were dealing with something more serious than just a case of seasickness. The cruise line sent samples to a lab to determine the cause of the illness spreading on board. The passengers waited anxiously until finally the lab results arrived, confirming the worst fears of the passengers. It was the norovirus. Panic swept through the ship as people realized the extent of the outbreak. As the ship sailed towards its destination, a cloud of uncertainty and fear hung over everyone on board, wondering what would happen next. The ship's medical team sprang into action, trying to isolate the sick passengers and prevent the virus from spreading further. They prescribed anti-nausea and diarrhea medication and told everyone to stay in their cabins until the virus passed. But despite their best efforts, the virus continued to spread like wildfire. Nearly a quarter of the passengers were struck with the illness, along with dozens of the crew members. The ship's crew had to conduct some enhanced cleaning, but it was a losing battle. Norovirus is notoriously difficult to eradicate, and it seemed like every surface on the ship was contaminated. Passengers who had been looking forward to a week of fun in the sun found themselves confined to their cabins, feeling weak and miserable. They could hear the ominous sounds of sick people coming from nearby rooms, and they knew that they were in the midst of a full-blown epidemic, and perhaps they were next. As the days wore on, the situation became more and more desperate. Some passengers had to receive fluids intravenously, and doctors prescribed antibiotics in addition to traditional medications formerly given to try to ease their suffering. But it was a grim scene, with people lying in their cabins too weak to move, and the ship's staff struggling to keep up with the demand for medical attention. The virus showed no signs of slowing down, and everyone on board was terrified that they would be the next to fall victim. Some passengers tried to protect themselves by wiping down their cabins with disinfecting wipes and avoiding the buffet line, but it was no use. The virus seemed to be everywhere, lurking on handrails, doorknobs, and even on the hands of fellow passengers. At the halfway point in the trip, the cruise ship made a sudden announcement that they had hired 2 additional doctors to help manage the growing number of sick passengers. Many breathed a sigh of relief, thinking that the worst was over and that the doctors would be able to contain the illness. But it soon became clear that the doctors were facing too big of a challenge. As the outbreak worsened, the ship's crew scrambled to contain it. They worked tirelessly, scrubbing and cleaning every surface in sight, but it was an uphill battle. The virus was tenacious, and it seemed to be spreading faster than they could keep up. Passengers praised the crew's cleaning efforts, but they knew that it was a losing battle. Everywhere they looked, people were sick to their stomachs, their faces pale and their eyes glazed with fever. It was a nightmare come to life, a living nightmare on the open water, not the type of seasickness one might expect when preparing for a cruise. Eventually, the ship docked and the passengers disembarked, eager to put the nightmare behind them. But for some, the nightmare was far from over. They returned home only to fall ill once again with the same stomach bug that had plagued them on the cruise. As the Celebrity Mercury finally made its way back to Charleston, the passengers stumbled off the ship, weak and disoriented. Many were still feeling sick, and they knew that it would be a long road to recovery. Some passengers later reported that they thought there were many more than the 413 cases reported. The official count might have been lower than the actual number of people affected by the virus, but nobody knew for sure. It was a sobering reminder of how easily a vacation can turn into a nightmare. The passengers on the Celebrity Mercury had gone on a Caribbean cruise hoping for a week of fun and relaxation. Instead, they found themselves in the midst of a terrifying epidemic, fighting to stay healthy in a confined space filled with the sound of retching and the smell of sickness. A public health expert explained that the virus was highly contagious and could be shed by infected individuals for up to 2 weeks after symptoms had subsided. This meant that even after the ship had been thoroughly cleaned and sanitized, there was still a risk of infection. For the passengers who fell ill again, it was a cruel and ironic twist of fate. They had thought they were safe, but the virus found them once again. As they lay in their beds, their bodies racked with pain and fever, they couldn't help but wonder if they would ever fully recover. In the aftermath of the Celebrity Mercury outbreak, many questions remained unanswered. How had the virus managed to spread so quickly? Was the ship's cleanliness to blame, or was it simply a case of bad luck? And most importantly, what could be done to prevent such an outbreak from happening again? For the passengers who had experienced the horror of the outbreak firsthand, there were no easy answers. They knew all too well that even the most luxurious cruise ship in the world could be brought to its knees by a tiny, invisible virus. And they knew that the next time they set foot on a cruise ship, they would do so with a newfound sense of caution and fear of the powerful disease. As the newly sanitized ship sailed away from Charleston, leaving behind a wake of fear and misery, the old passengers knew that they would never forget the nightmare that they had endured on the Celebrity Mercury.